this is a really important story to tell, and to understand this is particularly now, because, as I was saying before, race is central to our story. Race, race, race. And a lot of people don't like that. And a lot of people don't want to hear about it.
Welcome to the End Game. I'm Tom Shanahan, and my co-host here again is Herman Balls. Herman, how you doing?
Okay, Tom, hanging in there. I tell you what, getting ready for some football season to start.
Yeah, it's not that far off. And then we are honored to have with us today a college football Hall of Famer, Michigan State football All-American, two-time, not only in football, but also in track. He was a big-time hurdler for the Spartans. And in 1966, I think it would have been, the spring of 66, Clinton and Gene Washington, Jimmy Summers, and one more. Who am I forgetting, Clinton?
Bob Steele? Are you talking about the
relay
NCAA?
team?
The relay team.
Third in the 440 relay team. And the winning team that year happened to be a San Jose State with an anchor named Tommy Smith.
Yes, yeah. And
But anyways, we are honored to have Clinton Jones with us today. Clinton, one of the reasons I want to have you on is because we've got kind of a revival going on at Michigan State with Mel Tucker, not only with the Spartans winning, but he has been retapping Michigan State's roots back to Duffy Daugherty and reminding his team and the campus and anyone else that it was Michigan State that led the way in college football integration. It was a story that's largely untold. I told it in Ray of Light. I'm going to tell it again in my second book coming up. But start out, Clinton, talking about the pride you have in your time at Michigan State and now the connection that Mel Tucker is reaching back to you guys.
Life is really mysterious. I had no intention of going to Michigan State. I really didn't know much about Michigan State. Coming from Cleveland, Ohio, I knew a lot about the Buckeyes in Ohio State. And it was almost kind of like a fluke, but I guess it was just to happen. I didn't want to go to the state school. I wanted to go to the Catholic school. I went to the Catholic high school. And but to make a long story short, I wasn't an outstanding football player in high school, and I really didn't get to play the start until my senior year. And so what happened was that my senior year, I got injured, and essentially I only played about 2.5 games. And but I wanted to make it at football because I just felt I could. But and I was going to this Catholic school that was only 2 black players on the team my senior year, another underclassman than myself. But having that injury, I was so disappointed. I said that I'm going to make it at football and die trying. And so as things happened, I wind up having only played 2.5 games. But in track, that my senior year, I never lost a track meet in indoor or outdoor track. So I wound up setting the national high hurdles record in the high hurdles. And then also I brought my grades up to 97.3 average scholastically. But so that spring of 1963, there's a gentleman from University of Nebraska, Bob Devaney. He came and recruited me. And he was the first one of the major, I would say, a D1 school that came after me. But they came out with a letter of intent the first year that they started that. And so if you sign with any of those conferences, like I signed with the whatever conference they were in, I wouldn't be able to go into the Big Ten and vice versa. But I was supposed to keep my mouth shut So when I ran the state track meet in May at the Horseshoe at Ohio State University, Woody Hayes was not interested in me because my coaches tried to get him interested in me because the school where I went to, every player, even if you sit in the bench, he tried to get you into some school and get a scholarship. Well, he saw me and became interested and said I was born to go to Ohio State. But at first, he didn't even know I was a hurdler. He thought I was a shot putter. Because at that time, I weighed about 198 pounds and running the hurdles.
That was big at that time. That was big.
That was big, running hurdles. And so he grabbed me, put his arms around me and said, you're coming to Ohio State and blah, blah, blah. And I said, yes, sir, but I won't be able to because I signed with Nebraska. He said, you did what? And they're interviewing, had us on camera. He shut it down, went off, made a call and came back. He said, well, you're a Buckeye now. And you'll be coming to Ohio State. Well, being a very nice, polite Catholic boy, I just kind of said, yes, sir, yes, sir. But when I got back to Cleveland, I had no intention of going to Ohio State. As a matter of fact, I had no intention of staying in the state of Ohio. I didn't like Cleveland. I didn't like Ohio. I didn't like Ohio State. And my father went to Ohio State back in the day in the 40s, the same school that Jesse Owens went to in Harrison Dillard. And the black students at that time, they couldn't stay on campus. They had to stay in the homes of black families. So I had no desire to stay in Ohio. But at any rate, he pursued me, but I still wanted to go to a Catholic school. And I almost wound up going to the University of Detroit, which didn't have a track team, but they said if I'd come there, that they'd start a track club. And they brought in Hayes Jones, who was an Olympic international hurdler, to convince me to come there. And I thought he went to Detroit. I later found out he's going to Eastern Michigan. So my Coach Dick Maravito, he said, Clinton, I don't trust those Jesuits. I want you to go to Michigan State, just take a look at the campus, because I have some friends up there. And I did. Gentlemen, when I saw Michigan State campus, I fell in love with it. Because essentially, even though I was from the city, I'm a country boy. I love the woods and the Red Cedar River. I said, this is where I want to go to school. And I looked at what the guys that were going to be leaving, like Sherman Lewis. And so I met Duffy that night when I went up there. Hank Buller and John McVeigh recruited me. And I asked Duffy, just all I want is an opportunity, sir. Just an opportunity. He said, well, I'll give you an opportunity. And so I came there that fall. And the rest is kind of history.
Urban?
It changed my life.
Yeah. So in that period of time, were there any other Black athletes there? And how did that influence your decision for doing that? That's the first question. And then what about the HBCUs and Grambling and Tennessee State? What was there a decision for you to make?
Not even a thought. I didn't know anything about historically Black colleges. I knew that a lot of my high school sweetheart, her uncle was the president at Southern University, and I knew about Howard University, but I had no interest in going in the South period. I hated the South. My parents, my ancestors from Georgia on both sides of the family. I hated the South. So I definitely, that was out of the question going any place in the South. And but essentially, Herman, I wanted to go any place anybody wanted me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wanted to go to Villanova. I wanted to go to Villanova because a guy named Paul Otis Drayton went to my high school, but he was 4 years ahead of me. He won the state championship at Ohio State in the 100 and 200 meters. We called him yards at that time. And he was Black, and he was a legend, at Cathedral Latin High School. And so, that's why I wanted to go to Villanova. Frank Budd and Otis Drayton were running there. But my SAT scores weren't high enough. I had a very low SAT scores. As a matter of fact, I didn't do good at all when it came to those big tests, like, big comprehensive tests. So it was my fortune to be able to get the opportunity to go to Michigan State, even though I didn't know anything about it. And
Okay, I want to hit on two things here. And the first one is you're saying you didn't do well on those tests. Okay, it's very obvious that for the career you had in football and after football, you have the intelligence to do a lot of things. And one of the reasons you didn't do well on those tests, and it continues to this day, families that know the deal are able to spend extra money to prepare their kids to take those tests. And I'm going to guess that you did not have an SAT prep course before taking the test or even know that it existed.
no, I did not at all. And actually, it's interesting. My, my mother was 15 years old when she had me in 1945. And she raised me, and after my father was kind of in and out, but primarily she raised me with the help of her mother, my grandmother. And like at 8 years old, I made a decision that actually changed the course of my life. And I told my grandmother, I said, Grandma, I want to go to heaven, but I don't want to go there without you. So you have to become Catholic, because my family were Baptists. The other side, my father's side, was AME, but I didn't know what that was. And then and I didn't want to go to public school anymore. Because at a very early age, I realized something. I realized racism, but I didn't have a name for it. But Cleveland and Ohio was thick with, well, Cleveland, where I grew up, was thick with it. I didn't want to go to public school. In public school at that time, I went to Lafayette High School. There was one white student. When I went in the 4th grade, I was already a year behind at a little Catholic school with many immigrants from Sicily and Eastern Europe. And so we had no sports. So somehow I went from the 4th grade to 5th grade, skipped to 6th, called back up at that school, and then got the opportunity to go to Cathedral Latin, which is a very renowned school even to this day, known for its scholastics and its sports, especially football and basketball, and also archbishops. How I got there, I don't know. But that changed the trajectory of my life. But I knew that in public school that you were treated differently. And I was definitely affected by Emmett Till. That had a tremendous impact in my life. And actually, I developed a subconscious attitude that all white men want to kill black men. No child should have that kind of thought in the head, but I did. But I wanted to go to this school in the area called University Circle, where Case Western Reserve and John Carroll and the Art Museum. Because I used to go from my neighborhood in Mount Pleasant to that, ride my bike over there, just to be in that environment. They take me out of my neighborhood, which was at that time pretty diversified with people from the South and the movement, and then people from Italy, a lot of immigrants and stuff. But the blue collar neighborhood essentially. But I wanted to get out of that environment. So that's why I wanted to go to that school, really not knowing anything about it. You had to take a test to do it. And I know I didn't pass the test, but somehow the people in the elementary school where I went to, Father Dunn and the nuns there, so they got me in the school there.
That's great.
And my freshman year, 300 kids came out for the freshman team. I played the last game of the season against the Catholic school from my neighborhood, Benedictine. They were beating us 50-0, and the coach put me in the last 5 seconds of the game. I was the only black in the team. He said, put Jones in the last 5 seconds. I said, give the ball to me. I ran as far as I could in 5 seconds before the game ended. And after that, I said, no more football. No more football. But something in me, Herman and Tom, my sophomore year, I saw the team, the JV team. They're practicing, and they already started up for 2 years. I went to Coach Jack Kelly. I said, sir, can I just can I come out for the team? He said, sure, son, come on out. And so that's how I got back into football.
So just step back, and again, I do want to ask how you integrated, I don't mean that so much racially, into the Michigan State team, But look at now how kids that are playing sports, that they start out with personal coaches in elementary school. They've got a weight program that they have off season, on season. What do you think your career could have or would have been with that type of tender loving care?
Well,
Diet.
that's a very interesting question, because you know what? That 10 to 11 care started with one thing that I realized: to be successful, you need a mentor or a coach or a teacher that really cares about you. The one thing that I had, even though my father wasn't there most of the time, my first mentor and teacher was a person named Jimmy Reeves, who was a fighter, middleweight boxing champion. I started boxing at 9 years old. That was my first mentor. Then there's a teacher named Mr. Misko. That was my other mentor. He used to take a bunch of us 5 kids in the little neighborhood out the outings in the woods in the country. When I went to Cathedral Latin High School, I had the brothers there. They took care of us. That was my refuge, and also was for my mother too. And like I was nurtured there. Even though there was only 20 Black students out of 1,000 boys, I was nurtured there. That mentoring, that, and also educationally, I mean, that was my home away from home, and that gave me an opportunity. But what I learned is that discipline and training. And because of that, my mentors were my peers, who mostly were older than me. They're the one that introduced me to track and running the hurdles. That mentoring, that makes a big, big difference. You have to have somebody. Being the only child, I had to learn how to entertain myself. But when it came to training, I was very disciplined. And I worked so hard in track that when I went to Michigan State, I didn't want to run track. I only ran track because of Gene Washington and Duffy Daugherty. I only wanted to play football. But I made a vow to myself at 13, I'm going to leave Cleveland, either go into the military, the Merchant Marines, or go to college. Fortunately, I went to college. And it was, I'm leaving a lot if we don't have time, but it was a challenge for me going to Michigan State. The big university, it was like impersonal. But what it was for me, I was with these brothers from the South and from all over actually, because my going through high school, I went to school with my friends and teammates, but I didn't socialize with them. So it was actually the training that I got in high school enabled me to be kind of like an intermediary between the white guys and the Black guys, because the Black guys didn't know how to mix with white people. But I did. So when I sit with the brothers, and then I go sit with the white guys, guys say, "Oh, Tom, call me Tom, Uncle Tom." They're joking, I didn't take it personally. But I was comfortable with that, but they weren't. But because, somehow the chemistry, we meshed together and develop ourselves. And I don't have to say this, Herman, because your question is very relevant. It wasn't so much the great coaching that we got. It was our desire. The guys in the South didn't want to go back to the South. I didn't want to go back to Cleveland. We determined we're going to do something, there. But now it's a whole nother thing. My mother wasn't looking for me as a paycheck. Just wanted me to be a good young man, But now you have like a profile film and all that. We didn't have any of that. It was all about the heart. It was a heart. And I'll tell you, the feeling that I better develop being with my brothers at Michigan State. But the white guys also, I would die for them. The same kind of feeling a soldier has that you train for, that developed naturally because my background and the people surrounded me. And it wasn't about color, it was about your character. That's about the heart. It's all about the character and the heart. There are guys that wanted to leave every week, Herman. I can't tell you how many guys, because I felt out of place at Michigan State, you know. But all I know, I didn't want to go anyplace else. I could have stayed in Michigan State forever for what it had for me. But we had talent, and it's very mystical how we all came together that way. And like we didn't have racial issues. We didn't socialize with the white guys. We had our own socialization because we danced different, the music was different. But when it came down to our mission, it was all about fulfilling our mission together, and that's very important. Today, it's a different paradigm.
I want to make sure that Tom and others got your reference that your buddies called you Tom.
Yeah.
That was a reference to Uncle Tom, which meaning that he would jokingly, they were telling him that he felt subservient to his white colleagues. And in the South, they would sometimes call people an Oreo. You're black on the outside, but you're white on the inside. But obviously you had the character to take that the way it was meant. And you were the liaison, you were the ambassador. And you know what? Most of all, you were a leader.
Yeah. And I was going to interject, Herman, that you could relate to that because you were having success in both the black and white communities at your high school, where you were the first black starting quarterback.
That's correct. So I know the feeling.
Yes, and see, like during our time, and I know Herman, you know this, but they didn't consider blacks intelligent enough to be a quarterback or a linebacker, a certain position that they thought was a high intelligence position in college, and also even up in the pros, and growing up in Cleveland, watching Cleveland Browns, I knew about football and I knew about the system in the NFL. I knew because the Browns, the black people, we lived in the same neighborhood.
Yeah.
I knew what was going on.
Yeah.
And
that was another way that Duffy Daugherty was ahead of the times because he had a black quarterback in Jimmy Ray, South's first black quarterback to win a national title. He had black team captains, George Webster and Clinton Jones. And then Charlie Thornfield was a black linebacker, middle linebacker. Same thing as quarterbacks. They didn't like to have black linebackers and black centers because there was so much decision-making involved. But it was a roundabout path for you to get to Michigan State. But once you got there, you had tremendous success. 5 first-team All-Americans and Big Ten, undefeated Big Ten champs in 1965, national champs by UPI. And then you come back for the 66 season. Expectations are high, and Michigan State, being ahead of the game with so many black players, wasn't afraid to publicize this. And Fred Staley, the great sports information director, lines up Duffy Daugherty with 5 guys that turned out to be 2-time All-Americans by the end of the 66 season. Clinton Jones, Bob Apiza from Hawaii, a Samoan, the first Samoan All-American, Bubba Smith, George Webster, and Gene Washington. And he poses them all together, which is why I'm wearing this shirt today, which Coach Mel Tucker has made. It started here at Michigan State, the integration of college football. And thanks to Mel Tucker understanding Michigan State's history, and thanks to Alan Haller understanding Michigan State's history. Alan Haller is our new athletic director, former Michigan State player, so he knows the history. We've never had a combination like this. And also Darian Harris, who Coach Tucker hired to run the player development program. There's never been this education and awareness of Michigan State's leading history. And Alan Haller announced in April that there's going to be a statue, and it's going to be based on this iconic photo. Clint, what's it feel like to have a statue about you on the campus sometime soon?
Well, I think that, they should have a statue of the whole team, but, that's not feasible. But, we couldn't do anything we did without our other teammates. It wasn't just 5, there are 13 All-Americans, actually. I don't know if you know that. They're a second string, but we had other guys that are unsung heroes, like Pat Gallinall, who played defense. had got on the scholar. For 4 years, he's an academic All-American. You had Tony Conte. We had, you know, we weren't the only leaders. We had a lot of leaders on the team. But, you know, we're all for one and one for all. And like any accomplishment that I made was because of the synergy and the unity between the rest of my guys. You know, this was definitely a team effort. We stood out for whatever reason, but I tell you, we couldn't have won those campaigns for 2 years and did what we did without each other. Everybody played an integral part. Even in Reuben Marshall from Oxford, Mississippi, who lived a couple of blocks from Ole Miss. He was a great quarterback. Reuben was very talented. He could have gone to a historically black school and been outstanding. But even though he didn't play until the last game against Notre Dame in 1966, and we requested that Reuben be put in, you know, to play, he prepared us. The guys that didn't play prepared us. They're as good as any team that we played against, you know. So when I look back, you know, it was just our fortune. Things have worked out that way. But, you know, also the whole atmosphere of the athletic department there at Michigan State at that time, they all bought into whatever this was that we didn't know about that we were counseling. They bought into it. We had that nurturing that Herman talked about. From other administrators, Jack Breslin, there's so many names I can't think right now, but they contribute to it. The life condition on Michigan State's campus in 1965, 1966, when the Vietnam War was going on, and also you had the counter-revolution that was starting on campus in every place, and then you had people being killed for just voting, going down to help, you know, there are a lot of unsung heroes that, and I feel that was for a reason. There are two people, they're twins from Grosse Pointe, suburb of Detroit, the identical twins. For 4 years, even to my pro career, they would send me information. We didn't have social media, of course, information about Martin Luther King, John Coltrane, Alice Coltrane. They're into jazz. They're white, blonde hair, blue eyes. They look like Martians. They would send me information about what was going on in the war and ask me questions to myself, to Bubba, Gene Washington, and and George Webster. They kept me, and also in spirituality, about yogis and stuff like that. Those two brothers, they kept me in touch with what's going on around the world. And we weren't just football players, we were involved in the community. You know, I was in Big Brothers America, Gene was. We worked at the boys training school during the summer. We weren't just football players, but we had that talent. We were involved in our community. And then the black fraternity and sororities, even though it wasn't that many, those other black students were there in academic council. We're a family. And how in the hell I wound up being Mr. MSU my sophomore year, first black, first underclassman, I have no idea, except that there is something there. And I feel it was for a reason, because that time period is so relevant to what's going on now. The craziness going on, somehow that is more relevant now than it was back then, but that had to happen. You know, everything is all connected, everything. And you know, the truth needs to be told. All the history needs to be told.
Yeah.
And my eyes, I have to put this in, my eyes were open when I went to Vietnam in 1971.
That was on an NFL tour. Yeah.
Yes. And so
I was gonna say, Clint, you know, from my research, a lot of black players took their recruiting trips to Michigan State and noticed how much you guys enjoyed the campus lifestyle because Michigan State was so far ahead. An example of that is Rufus Cormier, who, Herman, you know,
Yes.
he came up on a trip to Michigan State and loved meeting Bubba Smith and saw how the guys were all happy. He ultimately decided to stay closer to home at SMU because they had desegregated under Hayden Fry. But the thing Rufus told me is that other schools he visited where there were very few black students, very few black players, because back then there was an unwritten quota. You only wanted about 5 black players on your team. And they actually told Rufus, don't come here. There's no social life. So that was one reason Michigan State was different. And then I want to switch gears here a little bit and have you comment about how, Michelle Obama, our former first lady, she wrote about this when she got to Princeton in 1981. Her roommate was a white girl. And when the mom learned that, she had the administration of the dorm pull her out of there. She didn't want her daughter rooming with a black girl. Clinton in 1963, and you weren't the only one, you show up at Wonders Hall and you've taught and tell us about your roommate at Wonders Hall.
Oh, my roommate was named Miles Jones. We call him Mike. He was born May 24th, 1945. He was white. We were roommates. And so they had this new dormitory, so you'd have maybe 5 to 6 to a room, 3 in each room. Well, Mike and I, we had a room, and our resident advisors, so just 3 of us to that suite. And like we're friends to this day. To this day, his family owned Dawn Bakery in Jackson, Michigan. But here it is Clinton Jones and Mike Jones, May 24th, 1945. And like I never saw, I don't know how he saw me. I never saw him. I know what he looked like. And people say, you don't see color. I see everything. We all do that. We have eyes to see. But the thing is, we bonded. We bonded. And to this day, we're still friends. His company expanded internationally, and he now his kids in the business. But there's another guy there that was roommates with Jim Summers, our defensive back. His name was Frank Bognar. Well, he was Catholic, so we decided we were going to be roommates our sophomore year. But he decided to become a priest and go to the seminary in Saginaw. And we lost touch with each other for a while, except I did go to Saginaw to speak at the seminary while I was at Michigan State. 40 years later, he contacts me, and he's in California. He's gone from Virginia and Louisiana, and he's living in California. He contacts me, Frank Bognar, and he was on the board of the Nuclear Age Peace Foundation. And anyway, we came close. So I had many great friendships with people from all over the world in Michigan State. So I with Africans from Lagos, from University in Suku, one summer there, they had different tribes of people there came to study. There, my experience at Michigan State was like a dream come true. I had no idea I was getting into that, but it was something about the atmosphere at that time that it was really about the students, really about the students. And then I think the energy that was happening in the country, the changes going about, it started affecting the university. But that was the pinnacle of a university being a university, which is to humanize people, to educate them, and have them contribute to society. And many of my teammates and other students, they really, until they do something with their life, they're contributors to society. I'm really blessed. We all work. That's kind of a long answer to what but yeah, it was just very magical.
And Herman, you can relate to that experience going to West Point when there were very few black cadets.
At the time, there were not a lot. And Clinton, I don't know if you know, but a mentor of mine, Gary Still, had a birthday yesterday. He was the first Black to letter at West Point back in the 60s. And just a great, his daughter is Sage Still from ESPN fan. So Gary was there. So the whole idea, I think, and Clinton, I want to ask you this question. Of course, we have the name, image, and likeness now, or kids can become, millionaires right out of high school. However, the issue that I want to take on is you didn't want to go to the South. You didn't want to go back to Cleveland. You went to Michigan State. You went to class. You knew this was a way out. How do you articulate to these young men and women now how to take advantage of what you said you got at Michigan State, which was an education. Because I think the sports is great. And I was wise enough to understand that I was a good athlete. I was a very, very good athlete, but I wasn't a premier athlete. And that's when I had a chance to go to Vanderbilt, and I chose to go to West Point, go to the academy. And the reason I did is part of their recruiting process. I get a note saying, this is a guy named Pete Dawkins. This is what he's doing. And these are people you never heard of, but they're CEO of this company, that company, et cetera, et cetera. And I was thinking forward to say, okay, the football thing's going to be great. However, it's a means to an end. You're part of 1% that get to go into pro football, but everybody starting from Pee-wee to high school to college, they've got this vision that they're going to do what you did, and you were a chosen few. What's your message to these young men and women in other sports who have this phenomenal skill set? They're getting all of this attention, and they've got to know it's going to dry up when the last whistle blows. What's your advice to them?
That's all an illusion. It's an illusion. And this sport is a means to an end. And you can create great value playing this sport. You can have a lot of golden memories, but the bottom line is, if you're breathing, you're gonna have to be able to adjust and prepare yourself for the unknown. And it's about endurance. Most of the players that go in professional football, it's not what they thought it was. It's the same with me. You have to prepare yourself for life. Every human being has a mission that only they can fulfill. Their happiness is temporary happiness that we gain from the accolades that we get in sports. But the real benefit is what kind of person do we become in the process? That's the most important thing. And there's a phrase that I've learned to adapt. It's called human revolution. If I want things to be different in my life, I have to be the change I want to see. I have to change. The change inside of me is reflected in my environment. And I'm responsible for my life. I'm responsible for how I think. And I'm very disappointed, and I see so many, especially young Black men, that the life is going in a very negative direction. And because their thinking is off. We have to be able to think. Everything is created twice, in our thoughts and then in our actions, everything. So when I'm talking to young people, I have to ask them, what do you really love in life? What do you really want? You have to be clear about what you want. And then you have to take action steps to make those things happen. They just don't, otherwise they happen by default. You can't just be part of the boys of the crowd. You have to want something for yourself. And if you want something for yourself, it has to also include the benefit for others. You know, actually life is a team sport. And so many of these young athletes get to think it's all about them. It's not about them, you know. So when I'm talking to young people, I have to hit them straight up, you know. This is very temporary, you know. And to be very honest, I wanted to go in the Peace Corps or the diplomatic service. That was my other intention. If I didn't play football, and I wouldn't play professionally unless I went how things happen. My eyes are set on being an international citizen in person. But I really, and I'll tell you, this stage of my life, I'm devoted to raising young people for the capable young people for the 21st century, especially young Black men, especially them, because it's an epidemic of death among our young Black men, and it disturbs me. But I'm saying now society itself is damaged by this systematic racism that's been going on for all these years. This is the effect. Everything is called effect. What's happening we see in society right now is the effect of this original sin of what this country was built upon. That's the truth. And if we're gonna treat a disease, you have to know the cause of it. And this cause for child slavery affects everybody, and for generations. We have to get over and realize that the humanity is one family, and that we each have a mission to contribute to the greater family. It ain't all about Clinton Jones or Gene Washington, and not, as individuals, we don't make it a difference. We're just like a drop of water. But collectively, our efforts can make a difference. And right now, America is sick. And I believe that only through peace, culture, and education can we change things. Politics and social programs will change nothing. It's only temporary. So football is a culture, education is culture, entertainment, music is culture. But it has to be devoted towards humanizing us, making us truly human beings. So that's, in everything I do, I use my life to show the importance of treasuring the sanctity of life and the dignity of human beings. That's what I'm really all about. Been a chiropractor for 42 years. For decades, my patients know I play football, because a lot of them from other countries. You don't see until recently. You don't see stuff in my house about what I did. Because as a human being, that's when I show my humanity, and I love human beings. It doesn't matter about the. And so, I want young people to realize that they have a special mission when they have an opportunity to go to a school on a scholarship, a very special mission, and it's bigger than themselves. And so they have to think bigger than themselves and think, if they have that opportunity, use it, as many guys in the NFL are doing. They're smarter today, and they're taking advantage of the opportunities to capitalize on their fame and fortune. But it's short term. This life is all about endurance. You got to be able to look in the long run. And I guess in a sense, I see myself as a warrior, Herman. Always,
Okay.
child. I've always been that's kind of my mentality. And the mentor disciple relationship is vital to being successful at anything. You have to have somebody that can see what you can't see in yourself. That's what coaches, mentors, and teachers do. And that's what you all are doing, with your lives and your background. And I appreciate the opportunity to get my message across. It's life matters.
Yeah.
Young people matter. Education matters. Everything matters, and we have to treasure each other, treasure our differences, because that's what makes the flower garden of humanity beautiful. Our differences.
Yeah. Let me tie up a couple of loose ends. Clint mentioned Bob Devaney. He was a Michigan State assistant under Duffy Daugherty. He went off to Wyoming and Nebraska, and at both places, he followed Duffy's blueprint of recruiting more Black athletes than the usual 5 that were on a roster. And that's part of my second book that's coming out for football season, The Right Thing to Do. That Duffy's fingerprints were spread across the country by his assistant coaches, Bob Devaney, Bill Yeoman in Houston, Dan Devine at Arizona State, Missouri, Notre Dame, Earl Edwards at North Carolina State, Sonny Grandelius at Colorado. So Bob Devaney was a great coach. He won national titles. And then one other thing about Woody Hayes, when Clint told him he wasn't coming to Ohio State, he was going to Michigan State, Woody Hayes cussed him out on the phone. That's what his high school coach told me. He said that was Woody cussing out a 17-year-old kid on the phone. And I compare that to Duffy Daugherty. Terry Hanratty, Notre Dame's quarterback in the 66th game of the century, he told me that his second choice was Michigan State, and he dreaded calling Duffy Daugherty to tell him that he was going to go to Notre Dame because he'd heard these horror stories about coaches. And Terry said that Duffy congratulated him, said, "That's great. You'll love playing for our prestigious. Notre Dame's a great school." Went on and on and on, congratulating him. And Terry Henready said forever since then, he's been a Michigan State fan. And with that, Herman, bring us home.
Okay, well, Clinton, thank you so much for joining us. What Tom is doing here is really preserving for history some of the great people who have made, with his focus being primarily Michigan State, but he's really doing it on behalf of college athletics at all. So your leadership, your commitment to the game, and those of us who followed you, we know that we stood on big, giant shoulders. So thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Herman. And thank you for the opportunity of being in the program.
Okay, well, share this video with your friends. And always remember, Michigan State football, a river runs through it.